Her words were always so certain, so deliberate. "I'm honest," she had said, each syllable landing with a kind of conviction that made it impossible to doubt. Yet as he watched her from across the room, he felt the pull of contradiction, like a silent warning whispering through the air between them. She moved with the ease of someone comfortable in the truth, but her eyes betrayed secrets she refused to voice. There was a tension in the space that neither could ignore, a charged current that made even the simplest glance feel like a confession. Every encounter with her was a study in restraint. He remembered the brush of her hand against his arm, fleeting yet deliberate, sending shivers down his spine. A shared glance lingered too long, loaded with unspoken questions and desires they both dared not name. Something about her felt dangerously magnetic, pulling him into a story he wasn't sure he wanted to be a part of, yet couldn't resist. He wondered how much of her was truth and how much was a carefully woven illusion, hiding motives he couldn't yet see. She had a laugh that could light up a room, but tonight it sounded different, sharper, like a secret she almost let slip. He tried to read her, to catch the smallest gesture that might reveal her real thoughts, but she was a puzzle he couldn't solve. And maybe that's what drew him in the most, the challenge of untangling her layers, of finding the honesty she claimed to possess but seemed so determined to conceal. Each moment between them was electric, a forbidden game played out in casual touches and lingering stares. And as the evening stretched on, the air between them thick with tension, he realized the line between curiosity and temptation had blurred. He was standing at the edge of something dangerous yet irresistible, a story unfolding that promised more questions than answers. And in that instant, when her gaze met his with an intensity that could burn through walls, he knew nothing would ever be simple again. The truth, whatever it was, had a way of hiding behind the most familiar of faces, and he was trapped in the spell of discovering it. The room seemed smaller now, every sound amplified, the soft hum of the heater, the faint tapping of his fingers against the table, the subtle swish of her hair as she shifted slightly. They sat closer than before, though neither moved intentionally. Their eyes met again, lingering just a second too long, and the air thickened with anticipation. Every accidental brush of their hands across the table sparked a tiny jolt, a reminder of the tension they were both desperate to ignore. He tried to speak, opening his mouth to fill the silence, but the words faltered. Instead, he just watched her, tracing the curve of her jaw, the tilt of her head, searching for a clue he knew he might never find. She smiled faintly, almost imperceptibly, and it was enough to make his chest tighten. That smile carried mischief, warmth, and a subtle warning all at once, a silent declaration that she knew exactly what she was doing to him. Her laughter, when it came, was soft and unexpected, catching him off guard. She leaned slightly forward, her shoulder brushing his, a movement so small it could be accidental, yet felt loaded with intention. He wanted to pull away, to regain some sense of control, but found himself leaning in instead, drawn by something neither logic nor reason could explain. And yet beneath the pull of desire, there was a shadow. Both knew the unspoken rules of their world, the secrets that couldn't yet be revealed, the history that hovered like a warning just beyond the light. Every glance carried an internal battle, the longing to surrender to the moment, and the hesitation that whispered of consequences. Time seemed to stretch, each heartbeat magnified, each breath shared like a secret. In that charged space, words felt unnecessary. The room held them suspended, caught between curiosity and restraint, a delicious tension that refused resolution. And when her gaze locked with his again, steady and unwavering, he realized the night had only just begun, and the story between them was far from over. He caught himself holding his breath as she shifted slightly, her hair falling across her shoulder in a careless sweep that felt deliberate, all the same. The room seemed charged, the quiet hum of the city outside fading into nothingness. Every brush of skin, her fingers lightly grazing his as she reached for her cup, the faint pressure of their elbows bumping, sent sparks that neither dared to acknowledge. He wanted to close the distance, to lean in, but something heavier than hesitation held him back, the weight of secrets, unspoken truths that lingered between them. Her eyes flickered, a fleeting shadow crossing the warmth of her gaze, and he realized she carried her own walls. The honesty she claimed, the confidence she radiated, was tempered by a vulnerability she didn't trust anyone to see. And yet, in those moments of raw sincerity, he felt closer to her than he ever had before. He wanted to reach for her, to brush the curtain of doubt from her face, but the pull of restraint anchored him. They talked softly, about trivial things, a joke, a news headline, the flicker of streetlights outside, and in the mundane, the tension between them grew more potent. Every word, every laugh, every pause felt like a dance of desire and caution. Her lips curved in a teasing smile when their fingers accidentally brushed again, and he swallowed hard, feeling the tug between surrender and self-preservation. For a heartbeat, he imagined leaning in, letting the unspoken desire finally break through. But instead, he exhaled slowly, leaning back, creating just enough space to let the tension simmer without exploding. She mirrored the movement, a soft laugh escaping her lips, and in that delicate retreat, they both acknowledged the depth of what they were holding back. The air around them was thick with longing, charged with a heat they could neither name nor release. In that fragile balance of proximity and restraint, the story between them deepened, a quiet storm of emotion, anticipation, and the tantalizing promise of something more. Every glance, every touch, was a question without an answer, leaving them suspended in a world that existed just for the two of them. The room had shrunk to just the two of them. Each breath seemed louder, each heartbeat a drum echoing against the walls. She shifted closer, just enough that the space between them felt impossibly thin, a thread stretched taut with unspoken words. His eyes traced the delicate curve of her jaw, the way her lips parted slightly as if she were about to speak, but didn't. The silence between them was not empty. It was full, electric, charged with a tension neither could name but both felt in every fiber. She began, her voice barely above a whisper. The single syllable hung in the air, heavy with meaning, and he leaned in without thinking, drawn toward her, pulled by the gravity of the moment. His hand lifted slightly, hesitating, suspended between the want and the fear of crossing the line they hadn't yet defined. She met his gaze, and in her eyes he saw a reflection of himself, desire tangled with doubt, longing laced with restraint. It was the kind of look that could break you if you weren't careful, and yet it held him captive. Neither moved, and yet every micro-gesture carried weight. The brush of her fingers against the rim of her cup, the subtle tilt of his shoulder closer to hers, the way their knees nearly touched under the table. Time slowed, the ordinary world outside fading to gray as the two of them existed in this small, suspended universe. Every unspoken confession, every secret desire, seemed ready to spill into the space between them. And for the first time, he felt the raw intensity of what had been building, the closeness that was more than proximity, the intimacy that needed no words. Then she leaned slightly forward, just a fraction, and he mirrored her. Not fully, not yet, but enough that their presence together felt like a collision. The air was thick, warm, and alive with possibility. A whisper of a smile, a brush of a hand, and then silence. They froze, caught between the want and the restraint, suspended in that delicious, excruciating moment, on the edge of something neither could fully name. The rain tapped gently against the windows, a soft, rhythmic drum that seemed to echo the pulse between them. The room was dim, lit only by the golden glow of a single lamp, casting shadows that danced across the walls and softened the edges of reality. Every sound, every movement, felt heightened, the rustle of clothing, the faint brush of hair against skin, the quiet intake of breath as they lingered closer than ever before. He felt her hand graze his arm, deliberately light yet electric, sending a shiver through him that had nothing to do with the chill outside. She didn't speak, but her presence was a language in itself. Each slow blink, each subtle tilt of her head, conveyed 1,000 words she didn't need to say. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the world narrowed to just the two of them, every other sound, every other thought fading into the background. Her breath melted into his, brushing against the warmth of his neck in a way that made time bend and stretch. Their bodies didn't move with urgency, but every brush, every near touch, spoke more than any confession ever could. He could feel her heartbeat in the slight press of her chest near his, the gentle rise and fall of her shoulders as she leaned in, just enough for him to feel the closeness without crossing into the world of words or actions. The rain outside thickened, pattering harder against the glass, and he felt the quiet surrender of the night wrap around them. There was no need for words. Their silence was full, rich, and eloquent. In that luminous, intimate cocoon, they let go of the walls that had kept them apart, allowing desire and affection to intertwine seamlessly. Every unspoken promise, every withheld confession, felt alive between them. And when their fingers finally brushed, lingering just enough to convey everything, it wasn't just a touch, it was a culmination of months of longing, hesitation, and restraint. Their bodies spoke the words they couldn't say, the night a witness to a connection that was as fragile as it was unbreakable. In the warmth of that room, with rain outside and hearts aligned in silent understanding, they discovered the delicate, breathtaking beauty of letting go. Morning light filtered through the thin curtains, soft and hesitant, brushing over the room like a quiet apology. The night had left its mark not in chaos, but in a delicate, lingering tension. They lay side by side, shoulders almost touching, yet each wrapped in their own thoughts. Silence filled the space, not uncomfortable, but charged, heavy with questions that had no immediate answers. He watched her breathe, small rises and falls, and felt a surge of both tenderness and uncertainty. The closeness of last night had been intoxicating, almost overwhelming, and now it lingered like a half-remembered dream. Was it love, or just an escape from months of restraint? He didn't know, and the ambiguity gnawed at him with the soft persistence of a tide. She stirred, stretching slightly, and their eyes met briefly. No words passed, but the glance held all the weight of what had happened, the longing, the hesitation, and the unspoken confessions. Her fingers brushed against his hand, almost imperceptibly, and he felt it like a lifeline. Neither moved to break the spell, though each knew the moment demanded acknowledgement, if only internally. Then, a soft knock at the door jolted them from their fragile bubble. A visitor, unexpected, brought with them a truth neither anticipated. A letter slipped under the door, a message from the past, a reminder that the world outside still existed. It was a small shock, a sudden twist, but it grounded them in reality. They glanced at each other, sharing a silent understanding. The night had changed something fundamental. They sat up slowly, hearts still racing, the air thick with the residue of desire and revelation. Whatever doubts, fears, or hesitations had existed before now felt tempered by the bond forged in shared vulnerability. Last night was over, yet its memory wrapped around them like a soft cloak, warming and unsettling all at once. They didn't need to speak immediately. The connection was already there, undeniable, quietly powerful, and waiting for the world to test it. The room was quiet, bathed in the golden glow of late afternoon sun. The storm from the night before had passed, leaving the world washed clean, fresh with a sense of possibility. They sat together on the couch, knees touching, a gentle closeness that no words could fully capture. Her head rested lightly against his shoulder, a sigh escaping her lips that spoke of relief, surrender, and contentment all at once. He didn't move, didn't speak, he let her presence be enough. Their hands intertwined naturally, fingers lacing together like they had been meant to all along. There was no rush, no urgency, just a slow, deliberate intimacy born of shared nights, whispered truths, and the tension they had finally allowed themselves to release. He tilted his head, brushing a soft kiss against her forehead, and she closed her eyes, letting the warmth sink in. Their hearts were no longer racing in anticipation but beating in quiet, mutual understanding. Every glance, every touch, every half-smile carried the memory of the nights they had hesitated, the mornings that had been heavy with unspoken questions, and the rain-soaked hours that had finally brought them together. If this were a story of parting, the memory of her would linger like a subtle perfume, impossible to forget, sweet and haunting. But as he looked at her now, he knew they had chosen each other, slowly, gently, with all the care and patience their hearts demanded. The tension that had once electrified the air had softened into something deeper, warmer, trust, connection, and the quiet joy of knowing someone sees you completely, and still stays. And in that golden light, the world beyond the apartment seemed to pause. The story had reached its close, not with fireworks or dramatic gestures, but with the weightless, breathtaking relief of hearts finally allowed to rest together, tender, whole, and human.